just a small town girl living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere. Just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. He took the midnight train going anywhere. A singer in a smoky room, the smell of wine and cheap perfume. For a smile they can share the night. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard. Their shadows searching in the night. Streetlights, people living just to find emotion, hiding somewhere in the night.
Seems like Labour, 2 points ahead.
Yeah, they've just got their noses ahead.
Our exit poll is predicting that the Conservatives are the largest party.
If this exit poll is right, Andrew, I will publicly eat my hat on your programme.
Of all the scenarios imagined, this seemed the least imaginable. The sitting Prime Minister off to see the Queen for a new mandate as the undisputed winner.
Then we can take these islands with our proud history and build an even prouder future. Together, we can make Great Britain greater still.
That the government should call a general election to be held on the 8th of June.
And what we're saying is the Conservatives are the largest party. Note, they don't have an overall majority at this stage.
It's time, frankly, that the opposition summoned up the nerve to submit themselves to the judgment of our collective boss, which is the people of the UK.
Now, in a few moments, polling stations across the United Kingdom will close, the voting will be over, and we'll be able to reveal the result of our exit poll. That's our first hint of the possible result. So, as Big Ben reaches 10 o'clock, we are standing by with those crucial exit poll figures. Here they are. Our exit poll is suggesting that there will be a Conservative majority. News, if you're just joining us here on election 2019 at 5 in the morning, is that the Conservatives are now past the finishing post. They have won a majority in this campaign, and that is the formal result for us.
As you can see, we've won before, and now we need to deliver a strategy to win again. 9 years ago, before I was a minister, and long before I became chairman, I was a 40-40 target seat MP. And in target seats like mine, the 2015 general election wasn't about Labour's failures. It wasn't about Jeremy Corbyn or getting Brexit done. It was about our local record of delivery. In just 2 years' time, our record of delivery will once again be a deciding factor in how people vote. So we need a massive effort to get our local success stories out, to share the incredible things we've achieved together as a party, and to let people know about the important work that we're still doing, creating jobs, investing in public services and improving lives. And that's what the 80-20 target seat campaign is all about. This is a targeted, focused campaign based on the 80 marginal seats we need to hold and the 20 marginal seats we have a serious chance of gaining. We're going to need a huge effort from everyone here today, every single activist, every single member and every single association, just like we had in 2015. Because whilst the last two elections were short and snappy, this campaign will take place over 2 years, just like the 2015 campaign. No one is saying it's going to be easy, but if we pull together, I know from personal experience what a difference it can make. And I'm thrilled to say that we've already hit the ground running. We've got new campaign managers across the country helping MPs tell their stories. The first leaflet of the 80-20 campaign is hitting doorsteps this summer. And over the next 2 years, there'll be an opportunity for everyone here and at home to play a role, whether that's sharing content on social media or talking to voters and changing minds. I'm confident that if we come together, put that effort in and get our message out, we can win the next general election. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy the hustings. We've got two excellent candidates and they're both clearly ready to be Prime Minister. But no matter which candidate you choose, let's remember that the country will be making a choice 2 years from now. A Labour government or a Conservative government. So let's get to work.
Hi, I'm James, the campaign manager for Bolsover. You probably know the seat because in 2019 we released Dennis Skinner, the beast of Bolsover, from his parliamentary chains and elected Mark Fletcher, the first ever Conservative to represent this constituency. I've worked with Mark since May this year, helping to spread his local success stories, highlight our levelling up actions and strengthen our vote. Now, we've already delivered over 32,000 leaflets and surveys, but I'm not slowing down because I've got big new targets to meet. We need to recruit new canvassers, new deliverers, new activists to spread Mark's message, not just on the doorstep, but on social media as well. That's on top of running local issue campaigns, such as here in Glatwell with the speeding campaign for the A617 and organising community events. It's tough work, but it makes a huge difference, and none of it would be possible without members like you and supporters like you. My position is funded entirely through donations, so every member, donor and supporter has the chance to play a massive role. Because although it's my job to grow the team here in Bolsover, campaign managers and successful campaigns rely on people across the country for support, whether that's knocking on doors or chipping in. So I hope that over the next 2 years, 80-20 candidates and MPs like Mark Fletcher can rely on you.
Please welcome Chairman of the party in Wales, Glyn Davies.
As Chairman of the party in Wales, my first role is to welcome you all to this important event, to thank you all for joining us, and very much hoping that you're all going to enjoy the evening. In Rishi and Liz, I know them both very well from my own time in Parliament. We have, as Andrew Stevenson has just told us, the party chairman, two really excellent candidates, either of whom will prove to be an excellent Prime Minister when they become Prime Minister on the 5th of September. Now, I'm looking forward to several weeks of informative, intense debate, sometimes debate, which on September the 5th will enable us all to come together as a team committed to winning the next general election, because that is really the aim of all of us in this room. And as Andrew said, we need to get to work to make sure that happens. Thank you. And my final role is to hand over to the chairman of the party convention, Peter Booth, who's now going to come up to take my place. Thank you.
Good evening, Cardiff. This is the third in our national tour of 12 hustings around the country, and it's the first outside of England. It's good to be here in Wales. Thank you all for attending this evening, and it's great to see so many friends and colleagues in the audience. And thank you, all of you, for braving Extinction Rebellion outside. These hustings are for us, the members of the Conservative Party, the opportunity to take part in a great exercise of democracy where we get to choose our new leader. She or he will be announced on the 5th of September, and as with the party of government, then will become Prime Minister very soon after. As Ian Dale, who moderated many of these hustings in 2019, said, and I quote, "I found chairing the hustings a surprisingly positive experience. The members really put the two candidates through their paces and asked some very searching questions. So I ask of you all tonight to make your questions searching, to make them succinct, and to ask questions and not to make statements. One question each, please, so that more of the audience get the opportunity to question our candidates. Both of our candidates have expressed a duty and a desire to fulfill our 2019 manifesto. Their differences will be about how to go about achieving that in a very different world from 2019, post-Brexit, post-COVID, in uncertain times internationally, as we've seen today in Taiwan, and where our union as a nation is being challenged, and that has particular relevance to you here in Wales. So I'm sure that you want to test our candidates and seek to establish their strengths and to see who you think is best capable of running our great nation. As we're all Conservatives, I know that you'll be respectful of the two candidates and keep your questions positive. For them, for me, and for our CCHQ team, who have worked so diligently to set up these hustings at short notice, and in midsummer, these hustings run on a tight schedule until our final rally in London on the 31st of August. As you know, our ballot has opened. The ballot papers are in the post. You can cast your vote online or by post. It's very easy to vote online, or you can choose traditional snail mail. And if you do post it, then please remember to put a stamp on your envelope. My hope is that this evening will give you more clarity about how to cast your vote. I hope that you'll go away enthused and energized in your commitment to helping our party at the next election. Quite frankly, we need your support. Finally, I want to thank you all in Wales for everything that you do for our party. It's much appreciated. And now, let's get on with the show.
Please welcome journalist and broadcaster Hannah Vaughan-Jones.
So everyone, can you hear me clearly? Just checking the microphone's working. Lovely to see you all. As the voice of God, otherwise known as Tom, has just said, my name's Hannah Vaughan-Jones, and some of you may remember me from just 3 years ago. It is certainly a bit of deja vu for me to see some familiar faces back. However, this time we have two different candidates, of course. It's the same privilege and honour for me to be here in your company tonight, but also, of course, to get to interview the next Prime Minister. And it is the same huge responsibility for all of you to pick the next Prime Minister on behalf of the whole of the United Kingdom. So I do hope that you will take that very seriously when it comes to considering your vote, but also perhaps considering your questions tonight. Make sure that if you've heard something already that's answered a question you had in mind, think of a different question. That would be great. And time is, of course, as ever, of the essence. Now, the format you will probably all know already, but essentially we will hear from the first candidate, who tonight will be Rishi Sunak. We will hear from Rishi's camp first. He will do his pitch to you as party leader. And then after that, Liz Truss will come on and she will do her pitch as well. Following that, then I will get a chance to interview Rishi, just ask him a couple of questions of my own, and then it's open to all of you, open to the floor. And then Liz Truss will come on afterwards as well for exactly the same. So hopefully we won't be too late. I know we had a bit of a late start anyway. And in the interest of saving time, then I will stop talking and we'll hand over to the first speaker for Rishi Sunak. Rishi, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you very much. 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 Thank you very much.
Please welcome former leader of the Conservative Party, Lord Michael Howard.
Well, good evening, everyone. Noswaith Dai Ki Baub. I'm delighted to be back in Wales. I was born in Gorseinon, went to school in Llanelli, where I grew up, and it's always great to be back. I go back a long way. I've known every leader of our great party since Harold Macmillan. And our last 3 prime ministers all served in my shadow team when I had the honor of being the leader of our great party. The greatest of all those leaders was Margaret Thatcher. I knew Margaret Thatcher. I had the privilege of serving in Margaret Thatcher's cabinet. And I want to tell you 1 or 2 things this evening about Margaret Thatcher. She hated inflation. So does Rishi Sunak. She hated the thought of increased borrowing. So does Rishi Sunak. She would never have countenanced unfunded, irresponsible tax cuts, nor will Rishi Sunak. And Margaret Thatcher always told the truth. She didn't tell people what she thought they wanted to hear. She told them the truth. And so does Rishi Sunak. Now I want you to look forward a bit, to look forward to the next general election, and to ask yourself the question, because in many ways it's the most important question of all, isn't it? Who's going to be best placed to win that election? Who's going to be best placed to beat Keir Starmer, the man who stood side by side with Jeremy Corbyn, who tried to persuade us all 3 years ago to make Jeremy Corbyn our Prime Minister? Who's going to be best placed to beat Keir Starmer? And I ask you to consider this. We will only win that election if, as we approach it in 2 years' time, inflation is under control, borrowing is under control, interest rates are coming down, and our economy is back on the path to recovery. And Rishi Sunak is the only candidate whose policies can deliver that outcome. We face many challenges in our country, but we're not alone. Many other countries in the wider Western world face similar challenges, but we have, alas, a leadership vacuum across the Western world. We have the opportunity of electing a Prime Minister who can provide the leadership we need not only in this country, but across the wider Western world. The people of Wales, especially Welsh Conservatives, are wise. We have good sense. We have good judgment. And that is why I am confident that we will choose to lead us, to inspire us, to take us to a great and glorious future. Our next Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Thank you.
My values, traditional conservative values, are clear. Hard work, patriotism, fairness, a love of family, pragmatism, but also an unshakable belief that we can build a better future.
I'm backing Rishi Sunak because he's the only one who understands rural areas like mine.
I want a leader with serious experience, somebody who can lead us through the challenges ahead.
I want a leader who will restore trust.
I am supporting Rishi Sunak.
I'm supporting Rishi Sunak.
I'm backing Rishi Sunak.
We're supporting Rishi Sunak.
Please welcome Rishi Sunak.
Thank you. So, Noswaith Welsh Conservatives. Yeah. Right, well, thank you all for doing an incredible job taking our Conservative message to the people of Wales. And gosh, do you do it well. So let me start this evening by asking you to join me in praising the incredible leadership of the Welsh Conservatives from Andrew R.T. Davies. It occurred to me this morning that Andrew R.T. Davies obviously took over from Paul Davies, and that was announced by Glyn Davies, who obviously took over from Byron Davies, which did get me thinking, if I just became Rishi Davies, maybe I'd have the edge here in Wales. But look, I'm standing here in front of you tonight for one very simple reason, and that's because our country, our United Kingdom, did something extraordinary for my family when it welcomed them here as immigrants 60 years ago and allowed them to build a better life. Now, I was raised with a few simple values. Firstly, that family means everything to me because the bonds of family are far greater than anything any government could ever hope to replicate, and we must never, ever forget that. Now, in my family, we prioritised hard work as the best way to forge ahead. My dad was an NHS GP. My mum ran the local chemist in Southampton, and I spent all my time working in her shop and out and about, delivering medicines for elderly patients who couldn't come in. I also did her books, her accounts, her payroll every month, and saw the power of a small business like that to provide jobs and opportunity in our local community. And for my parents, the way that they thought they could build a better future for their 3 children was simple, and it was through education. And I passionately believe that the best way that you can reduce inequality in society, the best way that you can spread opportunity, indeed the best way that you can transform lives, is to ensure that the birthright of every child is a world-class education. And I'm sure, looking out at all of you, that they are your values too, and that's because they are Conservative values. And mine is an entirely Conservative story, and that's why I want to be your leader and next Prime Minister, to put those Conservative values into action to build a better Britain, just as this country allowed my family to provide me with amazing opportunities. I want to do the same for everyone, your children and grandchildren, and make sure that they have the same amazing opportunities too. So how are we going to do that? Well, we need to restore trust. We need to rebuild the economy, and we need to reunite the country. Now, restoring trust starts with honesty. And as you can see in this leadership contest, I have not taken the easy road because I believe our country does face some serious challenges, and I want to be straight with all of you and everyone about what it's going to take to fix those. Now, even though that doesn't make my life easy, I believe it's honest, and that's what leadership is all about. But you also restore trust by delivering on the things that you say that matter to people. And that's why I've set out a bold plan to properly reform the NHS so that we can stop talking about how much we put in and focus about the healthcare that we're getting out. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to call out the fact that in spite of receiving 20% more funding, here in Wales, waiting lists on the NHS are the worst in the United Kingdom. And that's why we need to kick out the Labour government and give the people of Wales the NHS that they deserve. We also need to restore the trust of our rural communities, to back farming, to back food security, ensure that the produce of Welsh farmers is on kitchen tables across the country and beyond. But we also need to tackle the issue of illegal migration. Because for too long we've watched on our TV screens the scenes of illegal migrants coming in small boats, and that has to stop. I've set out a bold plan, a radical plan, and under my leadership we will finally grip that issue, restore trust in the system, and take back control of our borders. Now, when it comes to rebuilding the economy, I don't need to tell all of you what the #1 challenge is, you know, and that's inflation. And we've seen this story before. We know that inflation is the enemy that makes everyone poorer. It erodes people's hard-earned savings and pensions. It pushes up mortgage rates. Now, of course, I'm going to help people with the cost of living. That's what politicians should be focused on right now. Not spending millions of pounds increasing the number of politicians in the Welsh Senate. So yes, this autumn I will cut VAT on energy bills to help. But what I'm not going to do is pursue policies that risk making the situation far worse and last far longer, especially if those policies amount to borrowing tens and tens of billions of pounds in unfunded promises, putting it on the country's credit card, and then asking our kids and our grandkids to pick up the tab. Because that's not right, it's not responsible, and it is certainly not conservative. Now, I am going to cut taxes, and I've set out a plan to radically cut the basic rate of income tax by 1/5 over time, because as a Conservative government, I want to make sure that people's hard work is always rewarded and they have more money in their pockets. But we are going to do that responsibly. We're going to do it by being controlled with public spending, and we're going to do it by growing the economy. And this autumn, I'm not going to stick with the failed corporation tax policy of the past. I'm going to do something radical and different and reform business taxation, cutting taxes on investment and innovation so that we can get the jobs and the growth and the productivity that we need. I'm also going to invest in infrastructure, because that's how you grow the economy. And we need to call out this other Labour policy of not building any more roads for what it is, an act of enormous economic self-harm, and the people of Wales deserve better. And in a post-Brexit world, we need to be radical. As a backbench MP, I came up with the idea of free ports. As a Chancellor, I started to deliver them in England, and as Prime Minister, I want to ensure that we have not just one, but 2 free ports here in Wales, attracting jobs and investment in the industries of the future, including hydrogen and, of course, nuclear in North Wales. Because that's how you drive growth in the 21st century economy. My experience means I am the best person to lead our economy into the future and seize those opportunities that are there waiting for us if we're prepared to be bold and ambitious. Now, when it comes to reuniting the country, we have to do something that's never been done before. We have to make British political history in 2 years' time by winning a 5th general election victory in a row. Now, although that hasn't been done, I am confident that we can do it, working together. But it's going to mean that we have to appeal to swing voters everywhere. Here in Wales, in Scotland, in the north, in the south, in rural areas, in urban areas, in Brexit-supporting areas, in Remain-supporting areas. And I passionately believe, and all the evidence supports it, that I am the candidate that offers our party the best opportunity to win everywhere and ensure that Keir Starmer does not walk through the doors of number 10 Downing Street at the end of that election. And in conclusion, let me just say this. You saw me as Chancellor at the beginning of the pandemic act boldly, radically, ripping up the rulebook, acting competently to protect millions of jobs across the country, to save businesses, to ensure that we kept our economy resilient through one of the biggest shocks that we had faced. And I promise you that as Prime Minister, I will apply that same urgency, that same energy, that same grip and radicalism to tackling all of our problems, reforming public services, growing the economy, tackling migration, putting in practice those conservative values of hard work, of aspiration, of hope that we all hold dear to build a better Britain. But more than that, I promise you all this. I will give you my everything, my heart and my soul, everything I've got, to ensure that each and every one of you here tonight can always feel enormously proud of the Conservative government that I will be privileged to lead. So I humbly ask for your support, not just to be your next party leader, but also the next Prime Minister of our great country. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Right, Rishi Sunak, thank you very much indeed. And as I mentioned before, of course, Rishi will be back on to take some questions from me, but also take some questions from you as well. Now, you may have already heard some of these opening speeches, but they are obviously then tailored to you as well. And you heard a lot of mention of Wales and what the pressing issues are in this country at the moment. So hopefully that's a lot of food for thought when it comes to the Q&A and asking your hopefully very brief, but very to the point questions. With that, we are now going to hear from the other contender for the party leadership and for Prime Minister, of course. Let's hear from Liz Truss's camp.
Please welcome MP for Clwyd South, David Jones.
Well, noswaith dda gyfeillion. Good evening, friends. It's a great pleasure to be here in front of such a large audience of Welsh Conservatives. Welsh Conservatives and Unionists. And tonight we're here to play our part in the important selection process for the next leader of the Conservative Party and the next Prime Minister of our country, the United Kingdom, of which Wales is such an important part. And it's my great pleasure this evening to be here to introduce the person I believe to be the best qualified to lead our country, to lead our party, the excellent Liz Truss. Because I believe that Liz is a person with a strong record of delivery in government and a clear vision for the future of our country. She, above all others, has seized the opportunities that Brexit presents. It was Liz, when she was International Trade Secretary, who pursued new free trade deals around the world, deals worth billions of pounds to British businesses, spreading prosperity right across our country. And it is Liz, I believe, who will spread that prosperity still further. She will, for example, create new investment zones, including here in Wales. She'll expand the Shared Prosperity Fund, so helping Welsh communities who have been so badly let down by the Labour government here in Cardiff, and by improving the important transport links with the rest of the United Kingdom, because Liz understands that Wales's place within our union, the greatest union in the history of the world, is all important. And under her leadership, it will continue to be the most important union in the world. Now, as Foreign Secretary, Liz has shown strong, effective leadership. She has supported President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine against the aggression of Vladimir Putin and the Russians. She has given strong warnings of the dangers of Chinese communist expansion. and she has stressed and supported the Commonwealth, the largest group of free democracies in the world. And as Prime Minister, she will ensure that this country continues to pursue its important world leadership role. So, yes, I do believe that Liz is the person with the big picture vision. But she is also very much a down-to-earth person. She understands the problems that ordinary people, including here in Wales, are having just at the moment, with the cost of living, which is a huge worry for so many of us, so many of our friends, so many of our neighbours. Many people who simply don't know where the money will come from to pay the next gas or electricity bill, how they will be able to fill up their cars to get to their place of work. These are real people with real problems. And the last thing that these people need is high taxes. So Liz is right to commit to cutting the tax burden for ordinary people and for businesses around this country, to help them through this difficult time, and to help build that future prosperity to which she is so committed. And I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from her about that this evening. But I think you've heard enough from me. You came here this evening to hear from the future leader of our party and the future leader of our country. So cyfeillion, rhowch croeso nawr I arweinydd nesaf y Blaid Geidwadol. Prif weinidog nesaf y Deyrnas Unedig. Ladies and gentlemen, please be prepared to welcome the next leader of our Conservative Party, the next leader of our United Kingdom, Liz Truss. Thank you.
The United Kingdom is a great country, and I know that a united Conservative Party can unleash the potential of all the people who make our country so great. To win the next election, we need to deliver, deliver, and deliver for the British people. I know that our country's best days lie ahead. I'm the candidate with a clear vision for the future, who can drive change and get things done. As Trade Secretary, I negotiated deals with allies like Australia and Japan, creating opportunities around the world for British business. And as Prime Minister, I will continue to deliver on the opportunities of Brexit. I will lead a government committed to core Conservative principles: low taxes, a firm grip on spending, driving growth in the economy, and giving people the opportunity to achieve anything they want to achieve, regardless of their background. I will work day and night to lead a party and a government that puts more money in your pocket and secures a better life for you and your family. I've consistently delivered when I have said I would. And I love our country. I want the best for us all, and I'm the person to deliver that.
Please welcome Liz Truss.
Thank you. Hello friends, it's fantastic to be here in Wales this evening. Now, I was brought up in Paisley in Scotland and in Leeds in Yorkshire, so I consider myself to be a child of the Union. But I've learnt many things here in Wales. I've learnt in particular how to shear a sheep at the Royal Welsh Show. And what I've also done as a cabinet minister is fought for the interests of Wales. As Trade Secretary, I got the tariffs removed on the Airbus wings produced in Broughton, helping secure jobs for the future in the UK's largest manufacturing factory. And after 25 years of British lamb being banned in the United States, I got the lamb ban lifted. And my friends, in September last year, raised the issue specifically in the White House with President Joe Biden. And straight after raising the issue, the ban got lifted. And that is what I am prepared to do on behalf of our country, because I care about every part of the United Kingdom. I want people to have opportunities. I want people to be successful. And I believe we can be an aspiration nation. whichever background you're from, whichever parts of our great nation you're from, you should have the opportunity to succeed. But the reality is we face difficult times at the moment. We've got the economic crisis following COVID. We've got the appalling war being prosecuted by Vladimir Putin in Ukraine. Now is not the time for business as usual. We need to do things differently. We need to be bold. And that is what I would do. I'd have a plan to get the growth rate in our economy up. First of all, by getting rid of all the EU laws still in our statute books by the end of 2023. Rules on procurement, rules on investment, because I want to unleash enterprise and opportunity. I'd reverse the national insurance rise that was put in earlier this year, because I thought it was wrong to put on taxes on ordinary people when we didn't have to. I'd also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to cut people's fuel bills from day one. I'd also keep corporation tax low so we can attract investment into our economy, and we know how important investment is into Wales, in the pharmaceutical industry, in the aerospace industry, right across the Welsh economy. Because I think having the same corporation tax rate as France and being 10 points ahead of Ireland is not going to help us grow the economy. But we need to do more. We need to help level up our country. And you know that there are parts of Wales where it's very difficult to get a mobile phone signal. It's very difficult to get broadband. It's difficult to get on a train that goes anywhere very fast. And in particular, North Wales has been left behind. And what I want to do is change the Treasury funding formula. So we don't put all the investment in areas that already have it. We put the investment into places that have been left behind and need that help and need that economic growth. I'd also set up low-tax investment zones to attract investment into this area. I'd back our farmers, and I'm delighted to have the support of the NFU President, Myrick Raymond, and we worked very well together when you were NFU President and I was DEFRA Secretary. And I want to see our fields full of crops and livestock. I don't want to see them full of solar panels and other paraphernalia. We have a food security issue in Britain, and we need to make sure our farmers are farming, not filling in forms and doing red tape. And as well as boosting our economy, we need to stand up to Vladimir Putin in his appalling war in Ukraine. I'm proud that we were the first country to send weapons to Ukraine in Europe. I'm proud that we have put tougher sanctions on Russia than any other country in the world. But we need to do more. The fact is the Western world was caught napping whilst Vladimir Putin was advancing. That's why we need to increase our defense spending to 3% by the end of the decade. And of course, I don't need to tell this audience that that will have huge benefits for the defence industry here in Wales. We also need to stop the small boats and the illegal immigration in the English Channel. I worked with Priti Patel on the Rwanda policy. I want to extend that to more countries. And I will make sure in the British Bill of Rights we are legislating so we can't be overruled by the ECHR. But as well as freedom and democracy overseas, we also need freedom and democracy here in Britain. And I'm a plain talking Yorkshire woman. And I know that a woman is a woman. Now some of you might be laughing, but there are parts of Whitehall and there are parts of our public sector that don't seem to understand that. And I will make sure that single-sex spaces like domestic violence shelters are protected. I will also make sure that we do everything we can to defend our country and our values and promote our great role in the world. The fact is that there are too many people in this country who are ashamed of our history, who talk our country down, who say the best days are behind us. They are completely wrong. I'm afraid one of them is Mark Drakeford. And his you know, whether it's stopping the M4 relief road, whether it's whacking a tax on our tourist industry, I will crack down on his negativity about Wales and about the United Kingdom. I joined the Conservative Party back in 1996. And I've been a Conservative activist, I've been a councillor, I've been a constituency chairman. And I know how hard it is to win seats. And we did a brilliant job, you did a brilliant job of winning all those new seats in 2019 that we had never had before. But you all know that we need to deliver, because we promised great things to people in 2019. We promised a great future, we promised levelling up. People didn't vote Conservative because they wanted Labour policies. They voted Conservative because they wanted more enterprise, they wanted more opportunity, they wanted personal responsibility, they wanted control over their own futures. And that is what I will deliver. I'm somebody that's delivered in government, whether it's the trade deals I did at the Department of Trade, whether it's the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill that I put through the common stage of Parliament in the Foreign Office. I'm prepared to take on the orthodoxy, even when it might not be popular with parts of the establishment or the civil service. I get things done. And I think that's what our voters want. And with that, with delivering for people on the ground, for making a real difference to people's lives, we will be able to take on the plastic patriot Sir Keir Starmer. And we will be able to take on the low-energy version of Jeremy Corbyn that is Mark Drakeford. And we will win. We will win, my friends. We will win the election in 2024, and we will win the election in 2026. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn. So please join me in welcoming back for the first of the interview sections of this evening, Rishi Sunak. Hi, Rishi.
Hi, Hannah. Right.
Good to see you.
You too.
Right. Tax. Let's go straight into it, shall we? Sure. It's been a bit of a confused picture. You went from no tax cuts to some tax cuts, but not for some time. Do you accept that you could have been a bit clearer about what you want to do?
No, because I think there's two separate things going on here, and my position is I think, consistent, clear, and, as I said in my speech, honest. Now, I think the response to dealing with inflation right now is for us to be careful. I don't think launching on a spree of unfunded promises costing tens and tens of billions of pounds is the sensible thing to do. I think it risks making the situation worse, risking it lasting far longer. But also, it just means, as I said, all we're doing when we do that is putting lots of borrowing on the country's credit card. We're asking our kids and our grandkids to pick up the tab. So I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. What I do want to do on tax is the following. Over time, I want to make sure that we deliver a lower tax economy. And I've set out a plan to cut the basic rate of income tax consistently over time, because I believe in hard work, as does everyone here. It's a value that we hold dear. It should be rewarded, and that's why I want to cut income tax. And this autumn, I want to reform the corporate tax system. I don't want to stick with the policies of the past that haven't worked. I want to change what we do, cut taxes for businesses that invest and innovate, because that's how you're going to drive growth in a modern economy. So that's my tax plan. Okay. I think it's the right one for the country, because it will deliver jobs, it will deliver growth, and ensure that we can bring prosperity and opportunity to people everywhere, here in Wales and across the United Kingdom.
There's been some quite dire polls out for you over the last couple of days. With that in mind, and considering tax again, will you abolish inheritance tax?
No, that's not what I've set out a plan to do. I've set out a plan to consistently cut income tax over time, because I want to reward hard work. But look, I very much, as you heard from my earlier remarks, I'm someone who believes in supporting aspiration. I think that is a conservative value that many of us in this room will hold dear. Look, and inheritance tax is a way to do that. So look, over time, is that something that we should look at? Of course we should, because people who are working hard should be rewarded for that. And if they want to build something and leave that for their family, that's an entirely conservative instinct. And a government that I'm privileged to lead would very much want to support that instinct. That's what Conservative Prime Ministers should do.
OK, so not ruling it out, but not necessarily pledging it right now. OK, understood. On the public sector pay saga that's well, we'll of course bring up with Liz Truss in a bit. She's apparently had a change of heart on regional pay boards for public sector pay. Do you accept her clarification?
Well, look, I'll let Liz speak for herself. I'm glad she U-turned on that policy, because I don't think it was the right one. And it would have meant, I think, potentially, almost 500,000 workers in Wales getting a pay cut, which I don't think is the right policy to pursue. I think you level up by spreading opportunity around, by creating things like free ports, jobs and prosperity, by cutting people's income tax. That's how I'd like to do it. I don't think cutting the pay of hundreds of thousands of workers here, and indeed across the regions of the United Kingdom, is a Conservative policy that we should adopt, and I'm glad that she's changed her mind on it.
So it was a mistake on her part, and...
Well, I think you can ask her when she's here, but to answer for her own policies, but I'm glad she's changed her mind. And
you would still consider having her in your cabinet then, even though there's been this mistake over the last couple of days?
Yes.
OK. On to the Prevent programme, which I know you've been talking about today. You've talked about it tackling Islamist extremism as the biggest threat. What about far-right extremism? Is that not important as well?
It is, but if you look at what our counter-terrorist organisations are spending the vast majority of their time on, and indeed you look at what's happening in the criminal justice system, the overwhelming majority of it is Islamist extremism. Actually, from memory, it's something like 3/4 of all that activity is Islamist extremism. So, of course, that's right. The Prevent programme, though, I think at the moment was referring a far smaller proportion of cases on Islamist extremism. That balance is probably not right and needs to be looked at. Of course, far-right extremism is important and we should tackle it, but it's just nowhere near as pervasive as the threat from Islamist extremism. That's based on the evidence that we have today.
I want to push you on the language that you've used around this. You said you want to take action against those who vilify Britain. Does that include those who just disagree with the people who are leading Britain?
No, and actually from the counter-terrorist unit, they've been very clear on this. This is not a law against that, because of course there are free speech elements of it. What this is guidance to all the people involved in the Prevent programme, so they know what to look for, and that's based on the evidence of how we root out terrorism in this country. And it's right that we call out those who are trying to undermine the values of our society. And Islamist extremism is a big part of that. And it's absolutely right that the government is tough on it, and a government that I am privileged to lead will be tough on it, because that's how we're going to keep everyone safe.
OK. We are, of course, in Wales, in Cardiff, the Welsh capital. Congratulations on your noswaith laugh when you first came on. I don't know if you've holidayed in Wales before, spent much time in Wales before. What do you think of when you think of Wales? What does it mean to you?
I think of my dear friend and PPS, Craig Williams, who's sitting over there, right there. And Craig, do you think my pronunciation improved since we did it at a Welsh conference? I am. OK, good, right. Look, no, I'm enormously ambitious for Wales. And, when I look at Wales, I just see the incredible potential that it has. And when you talk about levelling up, you talk about opportunity. And I'm so excited. And I talked about free ports. That's a policy which I know can be transformational. It can bring jobs and investment. It can catalyse new industries like nuclear in North Wales. That's something that's going to be incredibly special. And we as a Conservative government, Conservative party, can deliver that kind of opportunity. And Wales can do that for the UK economy. I talked about farming. Now I represent a very rural constituency in North Yorkshire. That's my home. Now, I do love Yorkshire lamb, so I have to be a bit careful. But, I have to accept that Welsh lamb is incredibly popular. Well, I have to go home tonight as well, so be careful. But look, but that's an incredible opportunity for Welsh farming, for Welsh produce to be on kitchen tables, not just in the United Kingdom, but across the world. And so that's what I see when I see Wales. I just see a country which has got enormous potential, and I want to help work with everyone here to deliver that and actually make sure that people in Wales get the public services that they demand. And that's where we need to be more prepared to call out the failures of the devolved government here, because this path of onward devolution has not worked in actually delivering better healthcare and education for the people of Wales, and that's what we need to fix.
Well, on that point then, you've said in your opening speech as well that I think you said your government would be the most active in Wales in history. I mean, it sounds like an invasion. What does it mean?
No, it means demonstrating the benefit of the United Kingdom government in Wales in local communities. And as Chancellor, I was really pleased to help create something called the Levelling Up Fund, which meant that for the first time, the UK government could work with local communities here in Wales, with local councils and groups to figure out how to fund projects that will help communities and do that in a way that spreads opportunity, make sure people have pride in the places that they call home. And for the first time doing that, that totally changed the conversation on the ground. And it meant that people had a very clear, direct line of sight to what the UK government was doing for them. But I also said I want to be active by holding the Welsh government to account. Right? If I'm fortunate to be Prime Minister, I'm Prime Minister for the entire United Kingdom, for every single person. And I want the people in Wales to be able to rely on the public services that they deserve. And if the UK government is sending billions of pounds over to Wales and it's being squandered, it's not being spent properly, and children are not being taught properly in schools, and people are waiting unacceptably long for healthcare treatment, we need to call that out. Okay. And we need to make sure that we improve it, because that's what the people of Wales deserve.
Speaking also about public services in Wales, HS2 arguably benefits England, but well, obviously benefits England, but arguably leaves South Wales at a competitive disadvantage. Would you compensate Wales with perhaps an increased financial settlement then to invest in the rail network here?
Well, look, I'm very keen to keep investing in infrastructure in Wales. And I think you've seen from my track record, it's not just a Levelling Up Fund, but across the country, almost a dozen new projects have been funded at an early stage to restore railways that have been closed down. And as Chancellor, I was proud to fund upgraded signalling to the Cambrian line and improve connectivity and the speed between Swansea and Cardiff, amongst other places. So look, I've got a record of continuing to deliver infrastructure in Wales. Of course I want to do that, because that's one of the ways that we spread opportunity around. It's how we create jobs for people and higher wages. And that's the type of thing we should be doing. But you talked about being activist. That's why I'm going to call out the Welsh Government for this absurd policy of not building any more roads. I mean, how is that going to spread any opportunity? Of course it's not. And I want to be activist and call that out and try and fix it.
On the climate and well-being, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act has been in Wales since 2015. Would you support efforts to replicate that across the rest of the UK?
Sorry, the
Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Which is there are 7 well-being goals, which is basically an attempt to try and combat poverty and insist that all companies in the public sector, private sector as well, public sector predominantly, have to actually live up to these goals in order to ensure future generations' well-being.
Right. Well, I don't know the details of the Act specifically, but I mean, look, that doesn't sound like the right way to do it. I think the right way to do it is to spread opportunity and reduce poverty by providing a brilliant education for all our children in the first instance. Right?
I'll let you go away and dig into the detail of the Act as well. A couple of quick-fire questions for you. How would your friends describe you in 3 words?
Loyal, honest, and hardworking.
What makes you nervous?
Well, I was going to say, yes. So probably
interviews?
No, interviews I do plenty of. Probably my wife and my 2 kids.
And Boris Johnson may not have been trusted, but he was certainly liked, still is. Why should people like you?
Why should people like me? Well, look, people can make their own judgments on me based on my actions over the past couple of years, right? And, you know, I'm wanting to be everyone here's Prime Minister, leader of the party, to run this country. And right now our country faces some challenges, everyone knows that. And we need to make sure that the person we select is someone who's up to that job. And as Chancellor, everyone saw me act in very difficult circumstances to protect probably many people here, many businesses, the economy and people of Wales, as well as the United Kingdom, and got through a very difficult time. And I want to do that across all aspects of government, whether it's fixing the NHS, tackling the small boats and illegal migration, reforming public services, growing the economy, embracing all the exciting opportunities that we've got ahead of us, building a society that's built on values of hard work and aspiration and hope. That's what I bring to this job. And crucially, I'm the person that can beat Keir Starmer in a general election, because ultimately, that's what we all need to do. All the values that we hold dear, all the ideas that we want to see in action, all of that is for naught if we don't win that next election, and I'm the person best placed to help our party do that.
Rishi, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. We now hand over to you. So if you can please raise your hand. I can see the gentleman there. If you just wait for someone in a white hoodie, apparently, will arrive with a microphone. So if you could just wait and just, as I said before, please, everyone, keep your questions as brief as possible because we want to get to as many as possible. Sir.
Passion is measured by what we say, non-passion by what we don't say, and you didn't mention Ukraine once. Would you like to comment?
Yes, I'm happy to comment on it. So, look, I think we need to do two things in that situation. One is to strengthen Ukraine. The second is to weaken Russia. So, as Chancellor, I was proud to make sure that we found £2 billion from elsewhere across the government kitty so we could send it to Ukraine and give them both the financial support and the military support they needed. But more than that, I also played an instrumental part in weakening Russia. If you think about how we are attacking Russia at the moment, it's not with our direct arms, it's not through diplomacy, it's through economic sanctions. Those are the sanctions that I helped put together with finance ministers around the world, with Janet Yellen in the States, my colleagues in Europe. We went after Russian companies, the Russian central bank, their gold trading, their access to capital markets. That's what I did, that's what I put together. And as Prime Minister, I'll carry on with that policy. And if we can change the balance of power by strengthening Ukraine and weakening Russia, we can give Ukraine the best shot of resolving that conflict to our advantage. But look, on the broader question of defence and security, I was also the Chancellor that oversaw the biggest increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. £24 billion. I prioritised the MOD in the midst of the pandemic so that they got the funding and certainty they needed when they were putting together their integrated review. And I'm not going to stand here, as I know others would, and tell you, well, I'm going to spend this % on defence, because I don't believe in arbitrary targets when it comes to something as important as our security. I take a threat-based approach to that question, so what I can commit to is the following. I will invest whatever it takes to keep all of you and everyone else in our country safe, because that is the first duty of a Prime Minister, and it's certainly the first duty of a Conservative Prime Minister.
Thank you. If we can have this gentleman here and then the lady behind afterwards.
You can probably just shout it out, sir. Or if you shout it out.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. And then it will be the lady behind dressed afterwards.
Hannah, I've got actually a challenge for you. Could you ask this same question of Liz Truss, please?
Oh, okay.
Okay, because I'm not going to get the opportunity. Thank you. Rishi, it's a fantastic hustings speech, etc. But I've got a simple question for you. Forgetting you're an opponent of Liz Truss, why would you choose her to be Prime Minister and leader of the party?
Well, look, I think Liz is a good friend of mine. We share the same values. That's why, because at the end of the day, we're all Conservatives. And I know this whole process is designed to elicit the differences, but we can't forget the fact that we're all on the same team. We're all the same members of the same family here. And I know what Liz knows, that the real opponent is not either of us. The real opponent is Keir Starmer. And I know that she will also give her all to making sure that we all work together to beat Keir Starmer at the next election, because that's the biggest task we all have. And if you think she's the best person to do that, so be it. But I think I am. But what I can tell you is she will give her heart and soul to making sure we do, because she knows who the real opponent is. It's not me. It's not anyone else. It's Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. That's who we've got to go smash.
Rishi, what are your proposals for cutting the size of the Cabinet Office, which currently stands at 10,020, and for ensuring that civil servants return to their desks?
Yes. So, as one of the things that one of the last few things I did as Chancellor was start a process with the PM of asking all the departments of government to come back with a plan to cut the number of civil servants by a significant amount, to reduce the civil service back to levels that we saw years ago. Because a coalition government actually deserves enormous credit for being quite tough on this and driving out efficiencies. And a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we slightly took our foot off the gas and the numbers have creeped up. and together with the PM, we set out a mission for everyone to come back and tell us how they were going to cut the numbers. So all those things were just coming back when I resigned. So I'd like to carry on with that plan and get civil service numbers back to where they were 5 years ago. But how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by reforming public services more generally. Because if we all want to reduce the size of the state, which we do, if we all want to reduce the tax burden, which we do, we have to think boldly and differently about public services across the board. Because the civil service alone is not going to deliver the income tax cuts that we all want to see. We need to reform the NHS if we're going to do that, because it's the NHS that's swallowing up more pounds of everyone's here, and if we don't grip it and reform it, we'll never be able to get the tax burden down, and that's why I want to be bold and radical on that, which is why I set out a plan to tackle this issue of missed appointments, because for too long, millions and millions of hospital and GP appointments go missed, and that's a waste, and it's not wrong, and people are abusing the system. So if we can try and change that, change behaviour, be tough on those, make sure that people cancel those appointments in advance. Do you know what we've done? We've just created tons more healthcare. We can get the backlogs down faster, and it won't have cost anyone here a penny more in money or taxes. So that's the kind of radical thinking we need, not just on civil service numbers, but across the public services. And I will bring that different type of thinking because I want to get the tax burden down. I want to get the size of the state down, and I've got a plan to deliver it for you.
I'm sorry. Did that answer your question? Oh, it's just one question. I'm sorry. We just need to get to there's so many other people with their hands up. Apologies, and perhaps you can get your question to Rishi afterwards. The gentleman here in the lovely jacket.
Thank you. I don't know. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
I'm delighted you've got. You say you have a strategy to tackle the small boats coming across the channel, which is getting completely out of hand. Can you be more specific? Can you tell us exactly what it is that you're going to do and what's going to be different?
Yes, I can. So look, in long form, there's on my website, there's a 10-point plan, there's a video. So if you've got 5 minutes, if you care about this issue tonight, please go home and have a look. I'll give you a couple of elements of it now. One is we need to move away from the ECHR definition of asylum, right? It is, yes, you're right, we should clap that because it is important, right? It is far too broad and allows lefty lawyers to exploit it and frustrate our efforts. So I think we should move to the Refugee Convention, which is another international legal standard, but it is narrower and tighter and will give us a greater ability to say to people, you can't stay. Another thing we need to do, again, thinking radically and differently, is join up our foreign policy. Because at the moment, we have this slightly absurd situation that we'll go and talk to a country about signing a trade deal with them and giving them access to our market. We'll even go further and say, actually, here's some aid from our aid budget to help you. And whilst we're doing all of that, we slightly neglect to say, oh, hang on, can you take back your failed asylum seekers? That doesn't sound right, does it? So we need to join up our foreign policy so that these countries that we're doing other things with have to agree to take back their failed asylum seekers. But look, go look at the plan. In a nutshell, though, I am prepared to do whatever it takes, legal changes as required, to get the Rwanda policy working, to get control of this situation. I believe my plan will do it. I will deliver it for you. Because yes, we're a compassionate country. We welcome people like my family, but we did that fairly and legally. And it's right that everyone does it that way. We must have control of our borders, and that's what I'm going to deliver.
I'm working my way around the room, and I'd like to come to the lady here, second row back, with the dark hair. If you mind, yes, yeah, if you mind standing up, please.
Thank you. So we can tackle inflation by constraining demand or increasing supply. So what would you do to increase supply of renewable energy so we can bring down cost of energy? Will you be bold enough to scrap the embargo of wind, onshore wind in England?
So yes, in a nutshell, we've already said that we are open to do that, where we can do it with local communities, right? Now that has proven difficult, but I think actually with the different economic incentives, it might be possible that we can get that to work. We also, ditto, could look at that with fracking, by the way. So that's another thing where, again, if we can do it with local communities, we should look at it. But we can do a couple of other things. I talked about the free ports that I want to bring to Wales. The first one that we set up in Teesside. Offshore wind manufacturing is going gangbusters. GE are investing there and creating jobs because that's a growth industry for us. If we can crack small modular reactors, North Wales is a place where you could do that alongside the big plants. That's how we'll increase homegrown supply of energy. But we can also do something else in the short term. We can make sure that we insulate homes better. because there's a lot of government money and it's not well spent at the moment. And if we can help people with their loft insulation, their cavity wall insulation, temperature controls, relatively simple things that don't take very long, that don't cost a fortune, we can actually save people 300 quid off their energy bills and improve our energy security by reducing demand. But I'll do one other thing on the supply side while you're asking. Yes, we need to increase the supply of energy, but there's another area of our economy where we're tight, and that's the labour market. And right now, it is unacceptable that there are more people claiming unemployment benefit than there are job vacancies in the economy, right? That can't be right. There are more now than there were before COVID. So we've got to look at our welfare system, make sure that it's working properly, and be a bit more courageous and conservative about saying, hang on, when there are all these jobs available, it can't be right for people to be sitting at home claiming unemployment benefit. I'm prepared to be tougher on those things, to support those people into work, because that increases the supply of labour. It will be good for them, good for their families, good for the taxpayer, and good for the economy. So it's not just energy we need to tackle, it's the labour market and lots of other things. But I'm confident that with my plan, we can do that, beat inflation. And if we don't do that and we follow some other plans, I'm worried that the situation will last far longer and be far worse, and I don't want that to happen to anyone in our country.
Gentleman with the blue shirt, if you would stand up, please, and just wait for the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, Rishi.
Hi.
Welsh Conservatives have been in opposition in the Senedd for nearly 25 years. How are we all going to work together to kick out these Corbynistas and get into government so we can have a Welsh Conservative government in Cardiff working hand in hand with a Conservative government in London?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what we do. You know, Hannah mentioned, I want to be an activist Prime Minister when it comes to Wales. We need to call out devolution for failing when it's failing. As we talked about, the Welsh Government are letting down people in Wales with schools that are underfunded, right? What do we have in Wales? We have a stagnant economy, we have spiralling waiting lists in the NHS, and we have chronically underfunded schools which are depriving people of a life of aspiration and hope, right? The answer to that question is not more devolution. The answer to that question is calling out the Labour government for what they're doing and having the UK government do more, right? So that's how we're going to start changing that. We're going to start calling it out. We're going to start holding them accountable. We're going to be a more active presence in Wales delivering for people. That's how I think we can work together to solve this problem. And the good news is you guys have already made an incredible start. Right? If you look at I know the local elections were difficult, but that was because of what was going on elsewhere. You know, when you guys in the last couple of elections, you have absolutely smashed it. Look at all the new colleagues we have in this room that weren't here that many years ago. We can build on that momentum that you have created, working properly with a government in the UK bit that is supporting you, that's backing you, that's doing interesting and creative things. And the most important thing we have to do in all of that, I'm going to do everything I can to support you, but we're going to listen to that man there because he knows what he's doing. He's got a plan, and I'd be delighted to work with him and back him. Thank you, Andrew.
We've only got time for 3 more, hopefully, but the lady there with the patterned dress or top on.
Rishi, both yourself and Liz have spoken about pensions and poverty. You were the Chancellor, Liz was the Minister for Women and Equality, and then we have Teresa Coffey, who was pensions. As we stand now, we have the 1995 Pension Act and the 2011 that impacted 3.8 million women, where their pension was extended by maximum 6 years. Many meetings, the last meeting, big meeting, was with the Ombudsman. I'm getting there. It's crucial because there's some numbers for Rishi. You might not know the detail. The Ombudsman last July, the 20th, determined that the Department of Pensions had actually given maladministration on several counts. If you're aware of that, we've lost a year now of any action being taken for these 3.8 million women, of which 220,000 have already died. So if you become PM, will you put that on your list of to-do to fix this major, long-standing issue for the women?
Thank you. Right. Madam, are you talking about the WASPy situation? Right. Fine. So, look, I'm going to be straight with you. I can't promise you that I'm going to resolve that situation. Yeah. No, and so I just want to be straight with you about that. It has been through all the procedures that you're familiar with, and I've been part of a government that signed off on all of those as Chancellor I did. I can't promise you I'm going to suddenly radically change my mind on those. And I know that's not the answer you want, but I'd rather be honest with you. But what I can tell you is that I absolutely believe that pensioners should have dignity in retirement, that we should support them. That's why with the cost of living that I know is tricky for pensioners, they're most affected by cold weather. We know that from a health perspective, and they don't have the means to increase their incomes as easily. That's why part of the support I announced as Chancellor was particularly targeted at pensioners who will receive up to an extra £300 alongside their winter fuel payment this winter to help, and it's why the triple lock will be back in action as required, as expected, because that's what Conservative governments do. We need to look after our pensioners. You've done an enormous amount for our economy and our society, and I want to make sure that you get the support you need going forward.
We're going to have to move on very quickly. If you could just, a brief question, please, sir.
Yeah, certainly. First of all, Rishi, many congratulations on introducing and leading the incredibly bold and brave furlough scheme. I think it was superb.
Thank you.
Secondly, Andrew Stevenson introduced the debate tonight, saying the one key thing is winning the next general election. My question is to Rishi. How do you feel when the latest Ipsos Mori poll, looking at the public, says that 35% of people in the general public believe you have what it takes to be a good Prime Minister, but only 24% believe Liz is capable of that. And yet and you have the overwhelming support of Conservative MPs, we've seen that before, but the future of the next Prime Minister leading to the next election is to be decided by only 0.3% of the electorate, with an average age somewhere between 65 and 70. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you, I think, for highlighting the stats. Very helpful. Look, everyone in this room, you guys are going to take this really seriously, because you all know you have a really important responsibility, because we're not in opposition, we're in government. And whoever you select is going to be Prime Minister day one. Right? You all know the challenges that our country faces at the moment, whether it's with our public services, with getting our economy growing, helping people through this inflation challenge and the cost of living. You know what sits on the in tray. That's what you're choosing, someone who can grip all those things from day one. But you're also picking someone who can then go and win that next election, because as I said, that is the most important thing. And I know all of you will take that responsibility incredibly seriously. And actually, where I'm going around the country, people are also saying to me that they're talking to their friends, their family, the people they're out and about with, who are not necessarily members, because they get that they're doing this, and all of you are doing this on behalf of the country. We have to provide a leader that can lead the entire country and win that next election. So I'd urge you all to do the same thing, right? Because yes, we are a small group of people, but I know you will talk to your friends who are family, who are not necessarily members. You'll stop people in your communities, get their view, see who they think would make the right Prime Minister for this time as well. I'm confident that when you ask people that question, they will say to you that I'm the best person to lead this country at this time, to build a society based on hope and hard work and aspiration, and the best person to take it to Keir Starmer at the next election and smash him and make sure Labour are not in power for another generation. Thank you very much.
Rishi Sunak, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, while we await the second contender, obviously Liz Truss, I just want to remind you all, thank you all so much for those really thoughtful questions. And I know that some of these questions are hugely emotional and important. And I'm sure that the Conservative team around here will be able to take note of your questions and get them to the candidates as well, and get them to the teams if you want to have a more thorough answer, shall we say. We're just so restricted with time, but thank you so much. Now, let's get to the second contender to be leader of the Conservative Party and the next Prime Minister. Please, everyone, join me in welcoming Liz Truss. Don't trip up in the heels. Good to see you, Liz. Thank you. Please have a seat. So we'll kick off on public sector pay. Just to clear things up, because I know it's something you've been talking about non-stop probably for the last 48 hours or so. So regional pay for public sector workers. You said initially it was willful misrepresentation. Was it actually a woeful mistake on your part?
Well, what happened was we announced the policy. It was misinterpreted. It was never intended by the media. It was never intended to apply to nurses, doctors and teachers. So I wanted to clear the matter up straight away, and I have been very clear we're now not going ahead with that policy. It wasn't a central part of my policy platform, and I've been clear that it is not happening. There will be no regional pay boards.
It was going to be £8.8 billion that was your projected saving from that policy when it was first announced. Where will that money come from now?
As I've said, this is not part of my central costings. The central costings I have put forward are the reduction in national insurance, keeping corporation tax low, and also having a temporary moratorium on the green levy. Those policies will cost roughly £30 billion, and they will be funded out of general taxation, and we'll still be able to see the debt falling after 3 years. Now, the policy you're referring to was something that was much longer term. It wasn't about the immediate term. But as I've said, we're not going ahead with it. It's not happening. And I've been very clear about that. And I'm somebody who, when things are misinterpreted, when mistakes are made, I'm honest about that. And I've said we're not doing it.
The policy, as I understand it, was initially introduced to boost private sector competitiveness. I mean, Wales is the most public sector dependent part of the UK. Arguably, it would be a good thing, would it not, to introduce?
Look, the way I want to increase Wales's competitiveness is attract more investment into Wales. That's why I believe in keeping corporation tax low. That's why I'd set up low tax investment zones. And that's why I've been focused, when I've been at the Trade Department, on cutting tariffs on Welsh goods, getting more products into international markets, and boosting opportunity in that way.
You've said many times through the course of this campaign so far that you want to cut taxes to promote growth without fueling any inflation. We could get an announcement from the Bank of England tomorrow about borrowing rates going up. So does that change your perspective or change your policy plans?
We need to look at what's caused inflation. Inflation has been caused by a huge supply side shock after COVID and the appalling war that Vladimir Putin has perpetrated in Ukraine. And the tax measures that I'm putting in, i.e. reducing national insurance, keeping corporation tax low, will actually help increase supply in the economy. So they won't fuel inflation. Quite the opposite. They'll make sure more goods and services are available. The best way of dealing with inflation is monetary policy. And what I've said is I want to change the Bank of England's mandate to make sure in the future it matches some of the most effective central banks in the world at controlling inflation. The last time the mandate was looked at was in 1997 under Gordon Brown. Things are very, very different now. So I think the best way of controlling inflation is monetary policy. But what is simply wrong at this time is to be putting taxes up on ordinary people when they're struggling to pay their fuel bills, they're struggling to pay their food bills, and reducing a tax that was increased in April is not inflationary, it is helping people with everyday costs.
Various pay review bodies have proposed an increased public sector pay, that's across the NHS, teachers, police, etc. In order for the Welsh Senedd to deliver on that, they would presumably need more money here. So would you increase the financial settlement to Wales?
Well, there are consequentials through the Barnett formula that deliver for Wales. And it's important that that is followed through on. But of course, the National Health Service is under the Welsh government, and that's the right way of organising things.
But would you increase the funding allotment
Well, it
allocation?
automatically follows through the Barnett formula. When extra money is allocated in England, it follows through to Wales.
Okay, so that's a yes.
Well, it's automatic.
Yeah. We're in Wales. What does Wales mean to you? Have you visited Wales much? What do you think of when you think of Wales?
Well, first of all, I think of the fantastic food. And as you might have heard earlier, I'm a huge fan of Welsh lamb and Welsh beef and the fantastic feed that's produced right across Wales. I've been on holiday to Wales a lot. Horse riding, outward bound, all that kind of thing. Beach holidays as well. And it's a great part of the United Kingdom. And I guess I think of all the famous people from Wales, like Shirley Bassey, who I'm a huge fan of. One of my favourite songs is Goldfinger. I love the James Bond theme tunes.
Very good. I'm not going to ask you to name Welsh rugby players.
I thought you were going to ask me to sing Goldfinger.
No,
I've been getting ready. I've been getting ready
I'm sure
for that.
everyone would welcome a rendition. Of course they would. But no, we won't do that.
Some people have heard it.
You've already spoken about Mark Drakeford. Would you ignore him in the same manner that you intend to ignore Nicola Sturgeon?
I think it's a very different situation in Scotland and Wales, because what's happening in Scotland is the entire resources of the Scottish government are being used to run essentially an independence campaign. And I think that is grossly irresponsible. The Scottish government are not delivering for the people of Scotland. They are simply spending their time, and Nicola Sturgeon is spending her time agitating for independence. And the point I was making is the UK government should be doing what we're doing, which is delivering for the people of Scotland, whether that's driving jobs and investment in Scotland, whether it's delivering a strong foreign policy and defence policy that protects the entire United Kingdom. That's what we should be doing in Scotland. I think the issue in Wales is different. The problem we've got in Wales, and I mentioned Mark Drakeford earlier, is that the opportunities that are being brought forward by the UK government are not being taken up, like the M4 Relief Road, which would actually generate new jobs and growth here in Wales. Or the fact, I've made it very clear I don't like taxes very much, and the fact that he wants to put a tax on tourism in Wales, I think is a very big problem, just as we are trying to recover the economy after COVID. And what I would do is I would want to work with Andrew Davies and the team at the Senedd to make sure that together we have a very strong plan to challenge Drakeford's record in Wales, and Labour has been in power for 20 years, but also to challenge what Labour are doing across the United Kingdom and what Keir Starmer is doing. And I would want to have regular meetings with Andrew and his team. I'd want to involve our Welsh colleagues, members of the Senedd, in work that we do at Westminster. So we are really making sure that we are putting the best possible case to the Welsh people. And Andrew does a fantastic job of challenging Mark Drakeford, and I want him to carry on doing that.
So just I think I got the answer to this, but just a yes, no. Would your government build the M4 Relief Road?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. On to Taiwan, just with your Foreign Secretary hat on, please. Should Nancy Pelosi have gone?
Nancy Pelosi is well within her rights as Speaker of the United States Congress to travel to Taiwan. The issue here is the language and the escalatory language that we have heard from China. And I think that is irresponsible, and I urge them to de-escalate.
But should she have gone then, yes or no?
I've said yes, she's well within her rights to go.
Okay.
I mean, it's not my decision whether the Speaker of the US Congress travels to Taiwan.
No, of course, but presumably you have an opinion on it, so thank you for that. I want to just get to a couple of quick-fire questions. How would your friends describe you in 3 words?
Determined, loyal, and fun.
What makes you nervous?
I was very, very nervous at the Lionesses match when there was 10 minutes to go and they were winning 2-1, and I was absolutely petrified. I also don't, I think I mentioned going into Outward Bound in Wales. I don't like sort of jumping over large caverns and things like that. I find that quite scary.
There's one of the final questions to your opponent, Rishi Sunak, was the fact that it seems, at least, according to some polls, that you're very popular within the party membership, but the general broader British electorate are less convinced that you would be able to take on Sir Keir Starmer. Why do you think you would be a better candidate than Rishi Sunak at the next election?
I don't think that is the evidence we're seeing. In fact, I think there was a recent poll showing that I would be a more popular Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. But the reality of the situation is that we need to prove to people who voted for us in 2019 that we can deliver what we promised in our 2019 manifesto. That is the issue, and I'm somebody that delivers. I'm somebody that says what I think. What you see is what you get with me. I'm not the most, slick presenter, but I am somebody who is trusted. And I think that is important, and that's what we will be judged on at the next election.
You've described yourself as the change candidate and the hope candidate. You've also changed your mind quite a lot on policy over the years. Lib Dem to Tory, Remain to Leave, decades-old tax policy to tax cuts. Are you flaky?
I'm somebody who, I wasn't born a Conservative. You know, I was born into a left-wing household. You know, my mother used to take me on CND marches in the 1980s. I grew up, I got interested in politics. I joined the Liberal Democrats because I thought they believed in freedom. I found out they didn't really. And I joined the Conservative Party when I was 21. And I've been a Conservative activist ever since. And, you know, on the subject of the Remain vote, yes, I was unsure at the time. I was pretty much on the fence. I've always said that if we weren't part of the European Union, I wouldn't want to join it, but I was concerned about some of the disruption. The fact is that disruption didn't happen. And since the Brexit vote, I've done more than most people in government to deliver on the opportunities of Brexit, whether it's the trade deal, whether it's sorting out the Northern Ireland Protocol, whether it's promoting our foreign policy and being able to run an independent sanctions regime, which we were against Russia. And I'm absolutely determined now to get those EU rules off our statute books and to really open up Britain. And just finally, I want to say on this point, I think as somebody who is from not a Conservative background, who, you know, I've got friends in other parties, my family, lots of them don't support the Conservatives. But I know how to convince people and how to bring people on board. So I think being a convert is actually an asset. Because what do we have to do at the election? We have to convert people. We can't just talk to ourselves. We actually have to go there and win in the country.
And just finally, though, my final question, really, there are posters everywhere here saying trusted to deliver. I see what you've done there with the play on words.
Look, I didn't do the double S, though, even though some people wanted that in. I didn't do that.
Can you understand why some people might be unsure that that they can trust you when you have changed your mind so much? It's arguably a good thing to sort of, when the facts change, your opinion changes, that's fine. But some people might question whether they can trust you to deliver on what you say now if it might change in the future.
So everything I've promised to do in politics, you know, I went into my job as childcare minister in the Cameron government. You know, I delivered the policy on that, delivered the new GCSEs. My daughter's currently sitting the new GCSEs. She's not necessarily very happy with it, but I delivered that policy. You know, as Environment Secretary, I delivered the response to floods, and I, you know, worked to open up these opportunities for farmers across the United Kingdom. In trade, people said we couldn't get the trade deals done. I've done them. You know, yes, I do change my mind and I do change my opinions over time, but the principles remain the same. I've always believed people should be free to live their own lives. I've always believed that people and their families are best placed to make decisions, not big government. And I've always believed that, you know, in personal responsibility and taking responsibility for your own life. But, you know, who on earth has exactly the same views at 15 as they have at 55? I think that's, you know, that would be more weird in my opinion.
It's now time to go over to all of you as well. So if I can perhaps, yes, just here at the front, if you wouldn't mind just standing up and waiting for, there we go, a microphone. Thank you.
Hi, Liz. I have a severely autistic brother, and you said you want to cut the national insurance rise. So my question is, how would you fund social care?
So what I've said is I don't want to raise national insurance. I want to put it back to what it was before. But I'm still committed to the funding for NHS and social care. I would just pay that out of general taxation, but I would still make sure we're paying down the debt after 3 years. And my priority would be putting that money into social care rather than into the National Health Service, because I think at the moment our councils are struggling and many people are trapped in beds in the National Health Service because there isn't the social care available. So my priority would be to put the money into social care, and of course we need to do more to make sure that frontline workers in the NHS are empowered. We're dealing with issues like GP appointments and ambulance services, but my priority would be using that money for social care to help people like your brother.
Thank you. The lady here at the front first, please, and then we'll go to the gentleman at the back.
Hello, Liz.
Hi.
During the competition, there's been so much mudslinging. whether it's shoes, earrings, cartoon knives in the back, or patronising mansplaining. It's very demeaning and damage to our party Conservatives' values and ethos. What will you do to repair this damage before the election? And will you have sufficient time to implement your plans to convince the wider electorate that in that short period of time to avoid a Starmer government?
Well, I do agree with you that there have been some unfortunate sort of occurrences during this leadership contest. Frankly, it wasn't a contest I wanted, and I think everybody was quite caught by surprise when it happened. And some of the things like the debates, I wouldn't necessarily have so many debates again. I think it's better if we're talking to each other within the Conservative Party rather than airing our dirty linen in public. So I completely, 100% agree with you on that. What I would do as Prime Minister is, first of all, get on with it. You know, we need to start legislating, whether it's to make sure essential services are being provided on our railways, legislating on the tax cuts, legislating to replace EU law with new British laws. We need to get on with that straight away. And I'm somebody who does get things done in government, and I get them done quicker. What I would also do is make sure that if I'm selected as Prime Minister, I appoint people in my cabinet who are people who can be trusted and don't spend their time leaking and briefing. I want competent people who deliver for the people across Britain, and that is what will help us win against Keir Starmer.
Okay. At the back, please. And then I'm going to be walking over here. Well, not walking, but coming over there.
Hi. Will your increase in defence spending actually lead to an increase in troop numbers during this time of crisis in Europe?
Well, what I want to do is review the integrated review to make sure it is tough enough on dealing with the issues we face now, particularly the threat from Russia and also an increasingly aggressive China. And I will review with the Defence Secretary the various parts of the armed forces, as well as the new technologies we need to invest in, like cyber and space, and make sure that we have the right balance. But what's become clear is when we face a land war in Europe, we need to look at conventional forces as well as those modern forces as well. We can't choose between them.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you very much. Just here, please. Yeah, in the pink shirt, I believe it is. Yes, sorry, it was the gentleman behind, actually. Sorry.
My question's one about transport. If you were Prime Minister, how would you change the balance in schemes between road, railways, buses, pedestrian, cycling and shipping?
Well, I used to work in the shipping industry, actually, liquid natural gas shipping. So I am fond of the maritime industry, and I do think it's important. Quite a lot of the issues around shipping are actually due to the complex set of regulations. So I think it's not just about the public money we spend, it's also making these projects easier to deliver. I think transport projects take too long. I was involved in a rail project in my constituency in Norfolk, and it had to go through 5 stages before they even got to the point where they drew up a plan. And we've got to speed those things up. We simply can't wait to get spades in the ground. I also want to make the funding more level across the country. But there are different circumstances in different parts of the country. In rural areas, people tend to rely on roads, obviously very important. In urban areas, it's easier to have more provision for cycling and more provision for trains. So what I am not, though, is anti-car. And what I don't like at the moment about modern Britain is how anti-car some of the local authorities and policies around the country seem to be. And I know as a rural MP, you often have to have a car to be able to get around.
The gentleman there with his hand up and the blue, everyone's got blue wristbands, ignore me. And then to the lady over there with the sunglasses on her head. Sorry, just there. If you could, no, just the behind. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Hi.
I'm just wondering, because although housing is a devolved area, it's a British marketplace, so what you do will have a great effect across every nation. What will you do to increase supply of housing and tackle greedy land banking by developers so people my age can get on the housing ladder? Thank you.
Well, first of all, what I want to do on housing finance is to make it the case that when you are renting for a number of years, that positive renting history counts towards the ability to get a mortgage. So it should be easier for people who are renting to get on the housing ladder. In terms of housing supply overall, and I recognise there's a different or a separate planning system in Wales, what I want to do is get rid of the top-down targets set by Whitehall and instead have different systems operating in different areas. Because I think what we need in a place like London, where there should be more building up in the city, is very, very different from what we need in somewhere like Cornwall, where there are rural businesses and rural homes that need to be built, or indeed other parts of the country that need investment. And there I'd like to see modern Bournevilles, if you like, where you get workplaces built alongside homes where people locally working can live. And I think we could be much more creative. At the moment, we've got a very rigid planning system. It's very, very cumbersome. It takes years to get everything through. People get frustrated, and there's a feeling of powerlessness in local areas, so I would fix that.
Thank you. Yes, over there, please.
Hi, both you and Rishi have said that you would withdraw from the ECHR if necessary. What do you deem as necessary, and how long would it take, and would it leave us with complete autonomy over illegal immigration? Thank you.
So I firmly believe that we can deal with this issue in domestic legislation through the British Bill of Rights. I think that's the best way of doing it. I also believe that there's more we can do to reform the way the ECHR works. But my view is that by making the right changes to domestic legislation, we will completely be able to run our own border policy effectively. We'll be able to run the Rwanda policy. And that's the important principle for me, is being able to run that policy successfully without what's happening at the moment, which is when illegal migrants get on a plane, they then get on their phone to the lawyer, and we're not able to persuade them to leave the country. So it's fixing that problem is what's important to me.
There's a gentleman there in a dark grey blazer who's had his hand up for about 20 minutes, so I don't want it to fall off.
Thank you. We're the party of wealth creators, innovators and entrepreneurs. Now, during the COVID lockdown, a lot of those people felt excluded and abandoned and ignored. Many of them, when I was campaigning in the May elections, said to me, I'm not going to vote Conservative. I am a natural Conservative. How do we win their votes back?
Well, we need to win those people's votes back. And I don't think that we've done enough to support small businesses. I think in many cases they're over-regulated and it's difficult to get on and get things done as a small business. It's also true for farmers. It's also true for the self-employed. And there is an issue with Treasury orthodoxy that wants everybody to be employed and has gradually made it harder and harder to be self-employed in the tax system. I would want to review that, along with a general look at the tax system. I'm concerned, for example, about business rates and how they affect small businesses as well, so that we get a simpler tax system that's fairer. But the fundamental principle for me is that we have to be on the side of people who set up and run businesses, people who are self-employed, people who go out to work every day. That is who we as Conservatives should be on the side of. And every single time that any piece of so-called proposed regulation passes my desk, I always ask the question, what would the implication be for a business of this? Because many small businesses don't have massive tax departments and HR departments and legal departments to do with all this. They end up filling out the paperwork themselves. So we have to be absolutely rigorous in removing that regulation and not allowing new stuff to emerge.
Gentleman here, if you wouldn't mind just standing up so that people can see you for a second. We just need to get a microphone to you. Thank you.
Hi. I'd love to be able to ask you to sing, but I won't. Yeah, quite a few crises coming down the road at the new PM. One we haven't talked about is the climate crisis. Rishi talked about fracking. Could you tell us a bit more about the green credentials you'd bring to the party and how you'd win those green votes? Thank you.
Well, I was an environmentalist before it was fashionable. I was campaigning in the 1990s to protect the ozone layer. And if you remember at the time, it was Margaret Thatcher who led the charge on that, signing the Montreal Protocol. And we cannot let green issues be owned by the left, because they are fundamentally, well, they're known as watermelons, aren't they? Green on the outside, socialist on the inside, anti-enterprise, pro, just more and more regulation, tying business down. So what I want to do is hit the net zero target, but have a temporary moratorium on the green levy, reduce the costs for businesses and consumers of energy, use more gas in the short term. We need to do more to exploit the North Sea reserves, as well as fracking in areas that support it. But at the same time, do more to leverage private sector investment into transforming our economy, because there are huge opportunities. It is good to invest in renewable energy and nuclear energy, but we need to do it in a way which is about unleashing private enterprise, not trying to regulate it out of existence.
Thank you. The lady in the striped top, just in front of the pillar there, please. You've got your hand up. Sorry, just there. You. Thank you.
Hi. I was wondering, what are your opinions on building the Severn barrage to increase our electricity supply, considering it could be 10% of our current demand? But also, as you were talking about nuclear, is there an argument to nationalise the nuclear industry to actually get it to grow properly? Because we're going to need it when demand could increase 3 to 4 times in the future.
I think the plain reality of nuclear is that the government does have to underwrite it at some level. And I'm willing to do that because I think it's a vital part of our energy security. I'm strongly supportive of going ahead with Wilver in Anglesey. And on the issue of the barrage, I know that project was looked at before, but was looked at in times when energy prices were much lower and we weren't facing the energy security crisis we are now. So I'd certainly look at that project again as Prime Minister to see if it stacks up and see what we can do to make it happen, because we need a wide variety of energy sources. I talked about gas as a transition fuel. I think nuclear is important. I think renewables are important as well. So we have to do all of it. And frankly, we're making up for lost time. We should have been investing in nuclear years ago, and we now have to get on with it very soon.
Final question, gentleman there with the glasses on, if you wouldn't mind just standing for your question. Thank you very much. And keep it brief, please.
Thank you, Liz, for what you've just said about the environment, but it really struck me that in your speech, the only environmental mention was actually about scrapping the green levy. Now, if you're as committed to net zero as you say you are, why is it that you're pledging to scrap this? Money that is really essential to decarbonise our home, to help keep us warm in the winter, without describing exactly what you'd put in place to replace it. Just please reassure environmentalists like me that you're not just promising net zero as a target, but that you will be the person that can actually deliver it and not take us backwards.
Well, I do support net zero, but what I think is completely wrong is that we have put this money, this tax, on people's fuel bills when fuel bills are so high. We know that fuel bills are going up. We also know, that the cost of this, which is £4 billion, is affordable within our current budget envelope. So I think our priority at the moment should of course be reaching net zero, but I want to do it in a way that unleashes private sector investment, not in a way that punishes ordinary people who really are struggling at the moment to pay those fuel bills.
Okay, thank you very much, Liz Truss.
Thank you.
Lovely
Thank
to see
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Round of applause, please, for Liz Truss. I'm very, very sorry to the gentleman here. I didn't get your question in. I apologise. It seemed a bit unfair to leave tonight with a kind of like, why would you vote for Rishi? But thank you all very, very much indeed for your participation. I know that there are still vacancies for online registration if you still need to make up your mind and need to hear more from the candidates for future hustings as well. I think there's about a dozen more to go or something like that, so plenty of opportunity to still hear from them, if you can bear it, that is. Thank you so much for your company this evening, and Joachim Var, Noswaitha, and Nostar, everyone. Thanks.